Hello, how are you? And welcome to another episode of Genealogy Quick Start. And guess what? We are so excited to have a super extra special guest today. We have tried to bring in Dr. Debbie Abbott to be on this show for a very long time. And the last time she was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, you know who showed up? And not unfortunately, he showed up, but J. Mark Lowe showed up and did the quick start, which was amazing. But this time today, we have the authentic 100% Dr. Deborah Abbott from Cleveland, Ohio. So we are super excited, and she is going to talk about what Jim is a fanboy for this presentation. Like, he is so excited. He, as soon as he heard this presentation, he came back and was just Shamel. This is the most awesome presentation that I've ever seen. He didn't say that, but he acted like it. So what are we talking about today? Today, we are doing two new quick starts. We are doing advertising ancestors. Jim and Michael always come up with these interesting quick starts. And Dr. Debbie is doing writing a church history, which I'm telling you, it's going to be a gem. So make sure that you stay for that. And of course, you know what to do. Put in that chat where you are and your genealogy group. We love to highlight genealogy groups. And you know, the number one most engaged genealogy group for Genealogy Quick Start is, yes, it is AAGHSC, which is the Afro American Genealogical and Historical Society of Chicago. When I say most engaged, what they do is every time I send out a newsletter, they share it with their membership. And when I say over 100 people receive that and they click on it and they know about this show because of AAGHSC. So thank you. The number two most engaged is AUGS of Montgomery County. So thank you, Afro American Historical Genealogical Society of Montgomery County. Thank you for sharing your newsletter. And number three, I'm not sure who this is. I'd love to know who you are. But this is the third most engaged genealogy group. It is the Tennessee Genealogical Society. I asked Mark Lowe, and he said, it is not me, Shamal. But I would just like to say thank you to all of these groups for sharing our newsletter with your membership. Thank you. So without further ado, let me bring on the number one quick starters in the world. First up, James M. Beidler. Why is it not letting me bring you on? What is going on?
It says I'm already in the show, even though I'm at the bottom.
Okay, something's weird here. Give me a second to figure that out. It does say you're on. I'm gonna just take you guys off and then add you back. All right, let's see now. There we go with my name on his face. Hello, Jim. How are you today? Thanks for being here. Columnist and editor James M. Beidler. And of course, our man in the cemetery, genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. So I did express how excited you were about this quick start that Dr. Debbie is doing today. Jim, did you grow up in the church? And are there any special tips that everyone should think about when they're doing church records?
Well, I was an eighth generation member of the church that I grew up in. And my mother, the seventh generation member, she had a habit of being at church activities, as my dad would say with considerable chagrin, she'll be there till the last light is out. and and so I got dragged along a lot of times to those activities too. As far as records, uh, you know, when you have an ancestral church like this, go through all the dark corners because there may be records that even if some have been transcribed and so forth, not all the records have been. And in the records of this church, I found a baptism from 1747 for one of those eighth generation ancestors of mine.
That is super. Eighth generation. That is so cool. 1740. What? I love that. Michael, how about you? Do
Well,
you come from a church family
what
or?
Jim mentioned about the dark corner sounds like a confessional or something to me with what I thought he was gonna go with that. I guess the flip side of that is, you person wants to remember that you might have ancestors that were lukewarm church attendees, and maybe they went on Christmas, maybe they didn't, and that was it. So you want to keep that in mind, kind of as a different perspective. I think for me the neatest record I found, church record wise, was an ancestor who died. The family immigrated to the United States. He went back to Germany. We were told he went there to visit relatives and died, but that's not what Pastor wrote.
Uh-oh.
Pastor wrote he had returned to his hometown due to marital difficulties where he lived as a retiree, and then that was where he passed away. But the pastor was a little more specific. That's not the family story that got passed down. But pastor was a little more blunt in his description of what happened.
I love that. I love that. So, guys, you came up with yet another great quick start. But before we get there, let's say hi to who's here. We're so happy to have you here. Hi, Diane Gibb. Yes, the black and gold is here. Thank you for being here. Hey, Jersey girl, Paula Moen. Thanks for being here. Yes, it's a party. Once Gary Franklin is here from Toledo, Ohio. Hi, Gary. Hey, Wanda Looney from Birmingham. Always nice to see you. Hey, June Richards Hall from Shaker Heights. Yes, Dr. Debbie's people are here, including Anita Payne. Hey, Anita Payne from Fayette County, Tennessee, Genealogy Group, and AAGS Cleveland. It's always a good time there. They have the best public library in the world, I think. New York Public Library is pretty good too. And Free Library of Philadelphia. I shouldn't have started that. Hi, Jean from Collegeville, PA, AAGG, who's celebrating 35 years. Og's Family Quest. Jean is a junkie. Oh, now Gary wants to put in his stuff. He is with the Chicago group AAGS Cleveland. Hi, Robin. Thank you for being here from Houston, Texas. And yes, another black and gold. And she's partially, probably mostly responsible for sharing with the membership. Hi, Angela Allen. Thank you for being here. All right. I am so excited about this quick start because newspapers are just a never-ending place for research. So tell us about this quick start advertising ancestors. What are we going to get out of this?
Well, the first thing that I want to say about it is, remember, especially in this age of political advertising and television advertising, most newspaper ads historically were mostly textual. And from a genealogy standpoint, what does text mean? Text may mean names, text may mean places, text may mean a lot of things relating to your ancestors, which is not to say that display ads might not contain some things, probably not necessarily as much to your ancestors as much as social history type things. Like when I a slide I often put in my newspaper talks is showing 100 steam clams for 30 cents in the 1930s, whereas now that would
Yo,
cost you
where is the
$2.
time machine?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you want to go back to the Great Depression.
You're right, right.
I'll let you two do that, and I'm going to hang out where I am. I'll just throw that
Just
out
for
there.
the clams. Just for the clams. So are we ready for this quick start?
As ready as we're gonna be.
We
All
are.
right. Let's get going with the first quick start, which is advertising ancestors. So step one you have is to pick a family and a time frame. Okay. Because I guess that helps you with step number two, which is to determine available newspapers. So what's the best way to determine available newspapers?
Well, we're gonna seem like a broken record because I know we've covered this at least a couple of times in previous quick starts. But you want to go to Chronicling America, the site that the co-owned site by Library of Congress and National Endowment for the Humanities, and go to there. They now call it the List of American Newspapers in American Libraries or something like
Oh, is
that.
that what they rebranded?
They've rebranded the darn thing. It wasn't broke, but they decided to fix it. And this is as close to a master catalog of American newspapers as you're going to get on the internet. Because the important thing, at least to me, and why would I have a vote in determining something's important about newspapers? Oh yeah, I wrote the book about historical newspapers. At any rate, there are more newspapers than you think historically. I guarantee you, even if your ancestors were in East Tree Stump, there 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 is probably newspapers in East Tree Stump, and West Tree Stump that are all gonna in the same county and have something about your ancestors.
Well, even the newspaper in the county seat of Forest will probably also have references to these little stump villages.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to stay right in the area, but broaden out a little bit. The county seat, across the county line, and how far away adjacent states might have some references too, depending upon the proximity of things. So you want to keep all those things in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, look for more newspapers rather than fewer. Just because newspapers.com or Genealogy Bank has one newspaper from a particular county, don't make the assumption that that's the only one.
Yes, no assumptions. All right, so we know how to find where all what newspapers are available. Step three is to read a few to get a feel for the content and format. So, what do you mean by that, and how do we do that?
Well, what I meant by proposing this is that too many times people just want to fill in the search box with a name and go right to it. And the first thing is, with a fair number of newspapers, you can't even do that. You got to browse them. That you've got to browse them. That they're not searchable, only browsable. And the second thing is the OCR, the optical character recognition, that is the second skin over a digitized newspaper page that makes it searchable, is subject to some error. So it's best that you get a feel for the newspaper. A lot of these are 4-page weeklies in the mid 19th century that you're going to be looking at. And the obituaries are always going to be in column 2 of page 3. So get a feel for what's in these newspapers, or the classified ads like we're talking about are on the last page. So get all that ready for you, so that if you have to browse, you then know what the lay of the land is.
And also, when you read them, you'll get a feel for what phrases and what words are often in. If we're looking for advertisements, you want to have a feel for what things you might want to enter in as search terms, or you might discover that, like I did, some newspapers, they had a lot of legal notices in certain time periods, but not so many classified ads like we think of in the last 50 or 60 years. So you want to kind of get a feel for it that way. but just read through them, and then even practice searching, see what those search terms that could be helpful to you are besides just names.
I remember I was searching for segregation, and I was like, where are all the articles on segregation? No, girl, you got to search for Jim Crow. And then all the articles started popping up. All right. So that's step 3. Let's move on to step 4, which is, you guys kind of talked about this, try searches to see if ads appear in the search results, because a lot of times they're not a part of them. So what do you do then?
I would just pick an issue at random, find some classified ads, or we're talking about in this discussion, and then go back and do a search and see if you can find that reference that you found. Just practice finding things that are in there because you've seen them before, and then that'll also help you refine your search skills in general too. But because sometimes it depends on the newspaper and the time period. The print sometimes in some issues of the ads is extremely small, and the smaller it is, the more difficult it is for OCR to get it correct or even close to correct. So you want to keep that in mind too.
Okay, love that. So step 5 is to search for names and non-name details. So we know how to search for names. Everybody know their first name, last name. What are non-name details?
Well, first, before we get to that, when you say we know how to search for names, well, do you really know how to search for names? Because I mean, if it's not a common surname, you may just want to search for the surname, or if you do put in a surname, if you do put also in a given name, understand that there'll be things like John that gets abbreviated JNO a lot of times in the 19th century. I don't know where they got that from, but it's very common. Things that the OCR is not going to pick up if you are too literal in what you're searching for.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. I thought I knew what was up, and I don't. So thank you. We all need to take it slow. Did we get more into other non-name details? Did I miss
One
that?
of the things, and this is where reading the ads first is helpful in determining what these things are you might want to search for. I know one of the things I did a little bit later was I searched for my parents' phone number and my grandparents' phone number. Left their names out because sometimes their names were not in the advertisement, just a phone number they could call. What they might have sold, and sometimes your name might be uncommon across the United States, but in that certain town or that newspaper, it's like trot better. I put that in one of my hometown papers, and there's 2,000 hits. I'm going to have to do some refining of that a little bit. And so looking at the ads and kind of thinking about, if that's what your focus is, what words might have been in that ad to help narrow it down. It might not be first names. It might not even be last names either. It just kind of depends on some of this depends on the time period, what you might have to search for. But look at ads to get ideas for that. But phone numbers are great. In addition to street addresses, perhaps, or something else you might want to think about.
I love phone numbers and street addresses. That's great. All right. So
do you still know your childhood phone number?
No,
yes,
I do.
You? Yes, I do. Yes,
I do
Jim,
too.
You probably still have it. Do you still have yours?
Jim probably does. Yeah.
Until I turned off my landline like a year ago, I did 926-5083.
That's because it's still on the rotary dial phone you have in your office, and you looked at it.
Short 4 short rings on the party line that we were on as a kid.
All right, let's look at some of these ads. What do we have here? Oh, I love this Neill chickens.
This was an ad for chickens. I didn't find this searching by grandma by the name. Her first name is actually not listed here. This is typical of the time period, but I'm pretty certain I typed in her phone number.
You mean the nameless women?
Yeah, she's not Ida. She's Mrs. Cecil. But I'm pretty certain I found this by typing in the phone number and not. And you want to be careful with kind of trial and error with searching for numbers in things, depending upon whether it's a exact or just two separate chunks. I did not put 357-2791 in quotes.
Okay.
Because that's too specific. I just put the 357 as a word, the 2791 as a word, and then went from there. Nothing is going to find everything. Nothing's going to find everything. But Grandma was selling some baking hens in the 1970s there.
What's a baking hen? What's that different from another hen?
It's to be slaughtered and baked. It's not meant to be for laying eggs.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Neill Straw.
And these are two different. You took my file names very literally and made those the headers in the illustrations here. That's good. As you're reading those things, there's two different ads in the early 1970s for my dad. The one on the left does not have his name. I can remember getting these phone calls because the time period before 8 or after 4:30, that was based on when my mother got home from work.
Oh my goodness.
We always left a little before 8. She taught school, and we get home around 4:30, and that was the time frame there. But his name is not there, just a phone number.
Wow.
He had some hay for sale, and then about a year earlier before that, this time his name is in there. I don't know if he thought it'd make it more likely to get a phone call. I'm not sure. The time frame is not there, but he's got 50 pigs, 60 pounds a piece, and then call him and
a pig is a show. A pig is a show.
I think it's been weaned. That word is not used as much anymore as it used to be. But they were weaned. They've been weaned. That's what I'm pretty sure that means.
Okay.
This one's a little bit earlier, 1887. But this guy looks like he's fixing to get divorced. My husband has no authority to act for me in any manner, and I shall recognize no contract made by him respecting my property, real, personal, or mixed. George Ann Klein. So it looks like they're having some marital issues there. So you'll see those kinds of ads too, and not in this instance. This is one I found at random, but in one of my individuals, I can't find the divorce record for them. But I'm pretty sure they separated because they get married. He gets married to somebody else. But there's one of these notices in the paper 2 or 3 years before he marries again. And for some reason, I can't find the divorce record. But there's a similar newspaper notice. I'm not responsible for the other person's debts. That usually is a sign there were some issues going on there.
And there's no evidence of divorce. I'm sorry, Jim.
In this case, there might be. This is one I pulled at random, but in one I found for my aunt, I think she was not going to be responsible for anything he did. But I looked and could not find the divorce, but she did remarry after that. So I'm assuming there was a divorce. I just can't find it. The newspaper reference kind of hinted at that.
These become very common in the 1800s, and when divorces were very difficult to get at times. So this was their best way of separating as much as they can. I have found one in a German newspaper in the late 1700s that's kind of a prototype for this, where the people breaking up go back and forth, and he I can't remember the German, but in it, as his evidence of why he's breaking up with her, he says that she is a world-renowned whore.
Okay, let's be specific.
On that note.
And what do we have here?
This is a legal notice where they're giving notice that they're going to be taking testimony in a court case, and the parties that are involved, if they want to attend when these depositions are taken, they can do that. This is 1818. This was in a time period where court just met 4 times a year, typically what was called quarterly court or something of that fashion. And so many times they would take affidavits outside of when court was in session, and that would be in a public forum, so people that wanted to hear that could do that. And that's what this is, a fairly early one from 1818, but they're being made aware we're going to take affidavits in this court case, and if you want to be here, you can, because they're going to be read into evidence at the next term of the court.
Okay. So are these quarterly courts like the lower court? I mean, are
Right.
they
Right. This would be a county court, a circuit court.
okay?
The other nice thing about some of those legal notices when you find them is, if you weren't aware of the court case involving these people, the legal notice can be a step to then go look for the actual court records.
Yes, court records used to be very hard to scale, but not now with the full text search. Another one, Michael, tell us about this one.
This one's from about the same time period, also in Lynchburg, Virginia, but livestock was allowed to run free at this point in time, and these looks like Benjamin Robinson, living in the lower end of Bedford County. So if that was my person, I now know what portion of the county he lived in, the lower end of the county, near the Tabernacle Meeting House, in case it, 4 stray cattle. And then there's a description of the 4 stray cattle that he had found. And they were allowed to run free. He's found these 4, they're not his, and a notice is being published about the 4. I'm not sure what the time frame was, but at some point in time, if nobody claimed them, they were his. He was giving notice. He's got some appraisers there. My uncle was one of the appraisers. That's how I stumbled upon this.
This is serious.
Century, yeah. But another clue here: these appraisers probably lived fairly close to Mr. Robinson. So Tinsley and the other 2 must have lived, maybe not in Bedford County, because I'd have to know where the county lines were at, but relatively close to Mr. Robinson. So if I didn't know where they lived, this newspaper reference, this legal notice in this advertisement gives me a clue as to that, because the appraisers are going to be relatively close geographically to where in this case, the animals are at, just like estate appraisers. Oh, this one's a horse. Another stray or stolen from an enclosure near Rocket's warehouse in the city of Richmond, and then it describes the horse.
I love the description of the farm animals. Like, I don't know why that's interesting to me, but it just is.
But again, there's some, it's kind of neat to get that description of the animal, like you mentioned, but then there's some geographic clues in here. Mm-hmm. We know when these men are still living at this point in time. They're not dead. And depending upon our issues with an ancestor, just they're being mentioned could be a big clue at this point in time.
Love this. Do we have any more? No, that's it for those. So let's go through the steps for advertising ancestors. Step 1, you want to pick a family and a time frame. Step 2, you want to determine the available newspapers. Step 3, you want to read a few and get a feel for the content and the format. Step 4, try searches to see if ads appear in the results. And step 5, search for names and non-name details. I love searching for phone number. I'm going to call my aunties and ask them what my great-grandmom's phone number is, because they play games where they're like, I remember this number, I remember that number. So cool. Thank you so much for this quick start. Are you guys still there?
Yes.
Yeah,
all right, so I'll see you in a second.
We'll see you later. Thank you.
All right, 1 second, please, for us to bring on our special guest. Hello and welcome to our second quick start. I can't tell you how excited I am that Dr. Debbie, she's been on this show before, but she was just being cute and playing games. But today, did I tell you what happened the last time? Last time she's supposed to come. You know, things happen. I understand life happens. And you know who showed up? Her friend, Jay Marklow. So I was, okay, because who wouldn't want Mark to be on the show, right? So it was great. But today, she's finally here. So everyone, please, if you were in the room, let's give a big hand clap for Dr. Debbie Abbott. What is
Hey,
going
Shamel.
on here?
Dr. Abbott told me to get all of my church records together and have them here in case there's any questions. So I've got 3 stacks of books here. I'm ready. So, where is she? I'm like, I'm prepared. I looked up everything she told me, so I'm ready.
I wanted to make you laugh. Thank you, Mark, for playing along.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. Anytime.
So I forgot to tell you guys about Dr. Debbie. I just love this woman. She has come into my life because of IGHR. And oh my gosh, how much fun do we have, Dr. Debbie? Do we have fun or what?
We always have fun.
So Dr. Debbie,
any other way.
We can't do it any other way. So I am going to ask you the same question I ask all of our quick starters. Tell us your 1-minute genealogy story, how you got started, and when you knew you were hooked.
Oh my, it's hard. I got started after my grandparents and my mother were all gone. And I still had a lot of questions about my own ancestry. So I started trying to remember the oral history and trying to find them in the census records. And didn't know how. Took a trip to DC. They told me I didn't have to come there. I went to the National Archives, didn't have to come. That they had the film, and we were on film then at the Western Reserve Historical Society. I found my grandmother in the census as a little girl. And I think from that point on, I was hooked and realized that I could pull together my own history. And I did.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's how I felt the first time I saw my grandma in the census in when she was a little girl. So yeah, I just got chills thinking about that. So Dr. Debbie, when I say Jim Beidler was a fangirl for your church history, I mean he was a serious. Did I call him a girl? He's gonna kill me. He was a fanboy. He was a macho. He wasn't just a fanboy. He was a macho fanboy. So Dr. Debbie, let's get started with your quick start. You ready?
I think so.
Okay, you got it. She has a lot of stuff, folks. She has a lot of stuff. So let's go ahead and get started with writing a church history. So Dr. Debbie, can you first tell us why did this become a task in your life?
Well, one thing for me, it was important because I am a genealogist. And so it's important to me to make sure that things are correct when you tell the story. But I was not the person that had been identified by the church to do that. We had another person, Mrs. Evans. She was chosen as the church historian. And she asked for volunteers to help with that, but she also looked for people with certain skills. And I think she pulled me out of the pews because I was a genealogist, and she probably figured she might need something that I could provide, and I was happy to do that.
So you felt that hand on your shoulder?
I felt it, and I held on to it.
All right, Dr. Debbie, are you ready for this quick start?
I
Writing
think
a church
so.
history. All right.
Okay.
Let's get going with writing a church history. So step one is to form a committee with skills. So it sounds like you were just kind of describing how this woman pulled together this committee. Can you talk about some of the different skills that might be useful for for this team, writing a history?
Well, let me just back up a little bit because we didn't start out, I don't think, writing a history. The history for our church had already been written. What we were trying to do was to preserve the documents that we had. And we found that those documents were just all over the church. So that was the first thing, was to try to pull together what we had. But Mrs. Evans, I think, recognized that we needed people with certain skills. So we had on that committee librarians. They would help us be able to put the information together and to record it. She had secretaries on there who could help with the skills that they had. And when I had been given a task, and we'll talk about it later, of trying to find the deed to the church, we had to pull the architect. So we had someone in our church that was an architect who
Nice.
helped us look at the church really in a different light.
Okay, so all these different skills you kind of pull them together into a committee. I love that. So let's
Yes.
move on to step two. And we're just gonna talk high level through the steps, and then we'll share all your wonderful slides. So let's
Okay.
get through the high level talking. So step two is to collect and review materials on hand. So I think you just said they were kind of all over the church.
They were all over, but we did have a lot of things in a specific place. So we had a lot of photographs, and we had a lot of funeral programs and things like that. We had church records, church rosters, membership
Ah,
rosters. And so we needed to put all of that in some kind of order. And then Ms. Evans made an announcement in our church that anybody who had anything that belonged to the church, bring it back.
I was going to ask you, did you go, you say, hey, you was a secretary in 1970s, bring that minute book back. Did you
Bring
say
it
that?
back. And we helped them to understand that we weren't trying to penalize anybody, that they wouldn't be on a camera or be arrested or anything. Just bring it back. We just be glad to have it. And so we
Okay.
did get things back. And
Okay.
I'll never forget, one day we found a file cabinet up under the stairs,
Oh my
and it was
goodness.
full of records. And
So look
so
everywhere. I
we
get
had to
it.
look everywhere.
Okay. Let's move on to step three. Now that you collected everything, look under the stairs, everybody, and in the homes. Step three is to get help identifying photographs. That sounds like fun.
Well, yeah, it's fun. I have not been at that church as long as most, and so I was only able to identify a few. But we had long-standing members that could identify records. And then when we had our anniversary, we put photos on the walls in the church. And so as people walked through the history of Antioch, they could look at all of the pictures and all of the different ministries, and you would hear people talking about who was in them. So they
So
helped.
how did you did you have number the pictures and say, oh, number 1, 2, 3 is, Eddie Jones? Like, how did you?
I don't remember whether or not we numbered them.
Okay.
Okay. But if people, a couple of times when I was in the room where they were, if I heard somebody talking about they recognized someone, I wrote it down.
Okay.
So
That's cool. That's
yeah, they
cool.
helped
All
us
right.
identify them.
All right. So step four is to research history using traditional and manuscript records. So can you just highlight, because you're going to show us like thousands of things, can you just maybe list some of the ones that you're going to show and that are important traditionally, and what manuscripts are.
Okay. Well, manuscripts, of course, are loose papers, not necessarily digitized, but what we did was as we found things, and one thing, and I'm not sure that I have a slide for it. One thing that was found was a program, and it was a church program. It was dated 1893, and that's all it was. It didn't tell us what it was. And so Mrs. Evans gave me that document and said, find out what this is. And so, just as Jim and Michael, I used the newspaper and pulled one name from that program, put it in the newspaper uh, index, and it came up. And what it
Oh,
was the program that recognized our church as a church.
oh,
So
wow.
I bring back the newspaper article, and then it's attached to that program. So who's ever researching our church and they find that program, they'll know what it is.
Love that. Step
Mhm.
5 is to write the history. We'll see some of that. And let's go ahead and take a look at all these wonderful things that you have to share. So let us look at this. So what is this, Dr. Debbie?
All right. My church is Antioch Baptist Church, and we are a historical church and have made some really great strides in the community. We have an encyclopedia of Cleveland history, and so that's where I went first to read about Antioch Baptist Church. So as you can see here, this information is telling us where the church came from. It broke off from Shiloh Baptist, where it held its first meetings, who the pastor was, and it tells us it was established in 1893, and who the first minister was. And here it says that it was a student from um, Oberlin College. So it's a full page of Antioch Baptist Church, but I use that as
Nice.
the foundation in order to do the research.
All right, so you're looking for what's already out there, so you can
Yes,
start there. I love this old picture. What are we looking at?
that is Mr. Henry Meyer's house. That's where we first had our service, and that photograph supported the information that I found in the Cleveland Encyclopedia. And then we also had in our records a list of the chartered members. And so you can see all the chartered members there. And I did the best I could to research every one of those people, make sure it was correct.
Okay.
An oral history, I called it an oral history that had been passed down, and it was also in the Cleveland Encyclopedia, was that John D. Rockefeller had helped us in 1905 uh, build and pay for our first permanent church.
Wow.
I told Ms. Evans, I think that's something somebody made up. I don't believe it. She said, well, you go out and prove it. So I had to come back and say, you were right and I was wrong. And the interesting part to this is that um, it did not, the newspaper uh, carried a notice about this every week.
Oh,
Antioch
wow.
had to raise X amount of dollars, and when we raised those monies, then John D. Rockefeller matched it.
Oh, matching funds.
Yes, and so it ran every week until we had raised our money and he had paid. I learned a lot about John D. Rockefeller too doing this,
That's what
but
we
it
do
was
as
not, the oral
genealogists.
history was not false.
Nice. Oh, this is so beautiful.
That's my church. That's what it looks like right now. That's Antioch Missionary Baptist Church.
Nice. Was this in your church archives?
Yes, it was in the church archives. And the other thing about it here, and you can see the names of all the pastors that we have, but you can see how the roof of this church is pointed everywhere. I don't know what you call it, but the architect helped us to understand that we have have a double ceiling, because inside the church the ceilings are flat. And so on the outside, what you see is there's nothing outside that's flat, but
Uh-huh.
inside it is. And so
It
the
all looks
architect helped
flat.
us with that.
Okay.
And this was the other thing Jerry had me to do. And as long as I'd been at that church, I had never really paid any attention to a cornerstone. She took me outside. She says, tell me what these dates mean: 1893, 1905, and 1934. So I went about the business using genealogy skills to try to figure out what those dates were.
Okay.
And then I found them. 1893 was the date it was established. 1905 was our first permanent church. And 1934 is the date that we moved into the church that you just saw. So we've been in that particular church since 1934.
So do we have slides where you're going to tell us how you were able to find this out?
How you mean how I found the dates?
Yes, what the dates mean.
Newspapers.
Okay.
Newspapers and deeds, because she also had me to look for the deed for the
Okay.
church. And so we found it, me looking through, looking for the deeds and finding the deeds and seeing when we bought it. And so 1834 is it. The only thing
Okay.
was, we thought we had bought the church from Bolton Presbyterian, and we had not. We bought it from Cedar Avenue Baptist Church.
And I think you have some slides to show
I might,
that.
yes.
All right. So what is this here, Dr. Debbie?
This is a newspaper that was found, in our records, and you can see how badly it's deteriorated. And what I did with that was look at the title. Well, it's the Cleveland Eagle, which we don't have anymore, and it's, you can see very in the small print. It says Antioch pastor tells what ails race business.
Okay.
And of course, back to the newspaper. And then I was able to see what was going on during that time. And that was Reverend McKinney. And that's a picture that we had of him in our archives. This was the picture of him was I found in the Cleveland Calling Post, but we also had it in our archives. So
Okay.
everything that we found, we tried to put support with it.
Okay.
We also found this giving envelope, and this is
so cute.
giving envelope from 1935. It was 15 cents was what this individual was given. His name was Aaron Martin. And of course, Miss Evans say, find out about this. Who is this person? And so in the paper again, I found a photograph of him going to the service.
Oh, that wasn't him. Oh, okay. That's the
him.
photograph of him that you found going into the service in the paper. Oh my God. I know you had to just like jump around when you saw his picture.
So we brought that back. And then this is one of our pastors. Anybody that knows me know I talk a lot about Reverend Dr. Marvin McMickle, but we did this for all the pastors. We gathered as much information on each of them as we could, so that whoever researches the church will have a really good profile of the pastors that we have. And so these are some of the newspaper articles and magazines where Reverend McMickle appears.
Okay.
And so all of that is part of our archives.
Very cool.
And then this is what I was talking about in finding that deed.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I searched for it, looking in the Cuyahoga County Recorder's Office. And you can see I've highlighted it in red that we bought this church from Cedar Avenue Baptist Church, not Bolton Presbyterian. Yes.
Mm.
Bolton sold the church to Cedar Avenue, and then Cedar Avenue sold it to us.
Sold it to you. Okay, so you got the accurate information on that.
Yep.
Little, oh no, what happened? There's a fire.
We had a fire. I didn't know we had a fire. I'm just researching the newspapers, looking for Antioch Baptist Church. And Cleveland State University has the Cleveland Press collection, which is our old newspaper. It no longer exists, but they have the photographs for the Cleveland Press, and they had this picture. This picture didn't show up in any other newspaper, just in the Cleveland Press. And then, of course, when I came back with it, Miss Evans remembered when the church caught fire.
Wow.
And then she found the funeral program for Garrett Morgan.
Garrett
And
Morgan
again,
is on every single Black History trivia quiz there is.
Who, Garrett Morgan?
Yes.
Well, he was a member of Antioch, and she found the program. And then, of course, it was my job to see if there was anything else around. And you see, I'm spending my time in newspapers. And so it shows them bringing his wife and family out of the church. And this is in 1963.
And what's special about Garrett Morgan?
Garrett Morgan was an inventor. That's why we can stop our cars on red and ease through the traffic on yellow and stop on red. He also is the inventor of the gas mask. And a lot of people probably don't realize it, but he also was an inventor of hair products.
Uh-oh, don't get us started on that.
And then, of course, all of us had to go through COVID, and Antioch celebrated their anniversary, 130th anniversary, and we have a fan. And then we also had these masks. We had a young man in our church who made those masks.
Those are very nice. So this is a part of collecting current history. You're not just looking back, but you're looking at the, way back. You're looking at the near back.
Yes, we're trying to preserve the history today. So those are the things we're keeping.
And what is this?
This is, we walked. We had a special commemorative walk where we started at the very first church, which was at, I want to say, 27th Street. And in Cleveland, the numbers of the streets run in order. So you would have 27, maybe 29, 30. Okay, we are now at 89th Street. So we walked from the 27th Street church to 89th Street, because that's what they did when they moved there. When they moved to the church we're in now, they walked there. So for our 130th anniversary, we recreated that.
Ah, love that.
So that's our walk.
You guys got it going on. You eating and dreaming.
We have newsletters and emails and things. And so that's part of what we're trying to preserve. And so these are some of the things that you would see in our archives, because we're trying to preserve everything. We've got oral histories, we got CDs, DVDs, because we would record funerals and things like that. And so we have all of that we're trying to make sure is not lost.
Are you, Dr. Debbie, are you preserving like these programs digitally, or are you kind of like printing them out and saving them in folders? Like, how are you?
Right now, we found a repository
Okay.
because we don't have the equipment to do what you just said.
Okay. I get you. I get
So
you.
and plus we don't have the staff. If people are calling the church and wanting to know things or finding out
Mhm.
about things, we don't have the staff that can stop doing whatever work they need to do to look for different things. And so we are moving it out of the church into a repository. And that's just some of the programs that we have.
More programs. So let's
Yeah.
talk about these repositories and holdings related to Antioch Baptist Church.
Well, all of these repositories that you see here, archives, have records that pertain to Antioch Baptist Church. Western Reserve Historical Society has manuscript collections on a couple of our members as well as our pastors. Cleveland Public Library, in their special collection, has a special collection that contains a lot of anniversary pieces on Antioch. Cleveland State University holds our oral history. We recorded the senior people in our church, and Cleveland State University helped us with that. And those oral histories can be listened to if you want. It's on their site, and you can hear the members of our church tell their story. And then Caramoo House has a guest book that is from an installation of one of our pastors. And it was an installation where Martin Luther King came. And in that guest book, Martin Luther King's signature is there. But it is a
Wow.
part of Caramoo House, which is the oldest Black theater in the U.S.
So Cleveland Public Library having special collections is amazing. And you're saying these are all the places that all the little bits and pieces are that you had to come and gather. You didn't just sit in newspapers. You went further.
I went to see who else would have records that pertain to us. Now, those records, we can't get, but we tried to, when we looked for a repository to hold the records, we wanted to make sure, one, that they would be preserved, they would be available to the public to research, and that they told us that they would send people to other places
Oh.
to find information on Antioch. So those places that you just saw are some where the repository that we chose is going to direct people, as well as I found some manuscript collections in the state of Tennessee that talks about Antioch.
So that's
Very
what I was going to
important.
ask you, Dr. Debbie. There's so many places.
Mhm.
How do you know where to go and where to even start? Like, how did you know? How did you prioritize where to go?
You're talking about for the ones we just saw?
Just in like, yeah. So how did you know to go there? And you actually have like 30 seconds.
I can't tell you. I just knew to go there because I do genealogy. And so I
Okay.
went through their records to see if they had anything that was Antioch Baptist Church. And they
Okay.
did.
Okay. So you just got to kind of look at everything.
And I
All right.
researched all the pastors, and one of them had a manuscript collection that had Antioch in it. And it
Okay.
was in Tennessee.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. That was so bad. Did you see? I didn't know if we would get through all these slides.
We
I think
did.
you had one more slide.
One more, and that's where our records will go to Case Western Reserve University. They have a archives and special collection, and our records. Anybody that's wanting to research Antioch Baptist Church will be able to go there and look at the records. They will create the finding aid. They're going to preserve them, create the finding aid, and that finding aid probably won't be ready for another 2 years.
Okay, fantastic. Let us go through the steps for writing a church history. Step 1 is to form a committee with skills. Step 2 is to collect and review materials on hand. Step 3 is to get help identifying photographs. Step 4 is to research history using traditional and manuscript records. Step 5 is to write the history. And step 6 is to regularly update the church history. Thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here, Dr. Debbie. I'm going to bring everybody on. If I could get my fingers to move quicker. Here we are. And definitely, Mark, thank you so much for joining in. All
My
right.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. And I have some music for you. Have a great day and go use those phone numbers.